Roguelike is a subgenre of role-playing computer games traditionally characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death of the player character. We continue the selection of the best games in the roguelike genre, as well as games very close to this genre. Nuclear Throne. Pixel post-apocalyptic shooter with roguelike elements. According to the idea of the game, the world after the catastrophe is teeming with monsters and mutants, and only notes in history remain from people. In the role of one of the monsters, the player will have to explore the world around him, collect radiation from mutations, and also fight with his own kind. The player character will be able to grow new abilities and limbs, but there will always be someone scarier in this world. Nuclear Throne will please you with stylish pixel graphics, driving shootouts, and various details in the gameplay that twist the idea of the game to its fullest. The Fall of the Dungeon Guardians. A first-person role-playing game where players can create their own adventurer squad and explore a vast dungeon of twisted corridors, eerie crypts, and even abandoned underground palaces. In addition to unforgettable tactical battles with enemies in The Fall of the Dungeon Guardians, players will find well-camouflaged traps, carefully hidden catches, and unusual puzzles. According to the developers, The Fall of the Dungeon Guardians was inspired by such classic projects as Dungeon Master and Might and Magic. Darkest Dungeon. A hardcore 2D roguelike game with turn-based combat, a dark gothic atmosphere, and excellent hand-drawn art. Darkest Dungeon features a large number of randomly generated dungeons with interactable objects, traps, chests, alchemy tables, enemies, bosses, etc., and random game events. There is also a solid set of characters of different classes, each of which sooner or later will face inevitable permanent death. But the main feature of Darkest Dungeon is the need to constantly fight against such negative phenomena as hunger, illness, phobias, stress, and much more that affect the heroes. Even the brightness of the lantern plays a huge role here, influencing the psychological state of the squad and determining the behavior of its members when meeting with enemies. One of the most complex party-based RPGs, with several DLCs available for download, expanding the already rich gameplay. Roguelands. A roguelike and part-time platform game developed and published on PC by independent game makers Smash Games. Roguelands will take you on an epic journey through a procedurally generated universe made up of many different fantasy worlds inhabited by unusual creatures, including a wide variety of enemies and bosses. The whole gameplay here is aimed at the constant search for more powerful equipment and valuable resources, again, necessary to create various advanced types of armor and weapons. In general, progress for the sake of progress, procedural generation, and the obligatory irrevocable death of the hero, all in accordance with the canons of the genre. Dungeon of the Endless. An unusual game at the intersection of such genres as RPG, tower defense, and strategy, in the gameplay of which roguelike elements also noticeably show through. According to the plot of Dungeon of the Endless, a spaceship with prisoners crashes on the mysterious planet Auregia, once inhabited by a powerful race of the Eternals. Falling, the ship falls right into the abandoned catacombs, whose intricate network of passages rushes deep into the bowels of the planet. This circumstance presents the player with the primary task that defines the basis of the gameplay of Dungeon of the Endless: the desire to get out of the catacombs with his team. In turn, the rescue activity branches into many additional areas that provide gameplay diversity. For example, the player's duties include the constant protection of the crystal that provides the ship with energy, the collection of the necessary resources, the construction of production and research facilities, the distribution of tasks to subordinates, the exploration of undeveloped territories, and of course, the destruction of enemies. Sunless Sea. A dark role-playing game from independent developers Failbetter Games, which successfully combines elements of several different genres, including roguelike, and therefore made it to our list. The game takes place in the setting of the popular browser RPG Fallen London, which incorporates the characteristics of dark fantasy and novels about sea adventures, and also has some obvious borrowings from the work of Howard Phillips Lovecraft. The player will have to travel on his own ship through a vast open world, most of which is covered by the dark waters of the underground. Complete various tasks. There are text quests in the game. Fight, improve your ship, recruit and train crew members, participate in various random events, and do many other, often dirty and dark things. Crawl. Another role-playing game with pixel graphics made in the entourage of dark fantasy. The main feature of Crawl is the presence of an asymmetric cooperative for 4 people, where one player takes control of a brave hero exploring the dungeons, and the other 3 take control of disembodied spirits that can be embodied by various monsters and even traps, and seek to destroy the explorer by any available means. After death, the players switch roles. In general, the concept of Crawl is quite simple, but at the same time, the gameplay is addictive from the very first minutes and for a long time. RymdResa. Adventure role-playing game with elements of roguelike and space simulator, where the player has an entire universe at his disposal, randomly generated. RymdResa pleases with pleasant pixel graphics, very clear and detailed. It should be noted, the widest possibilities for customizing your own ship, atmospheric space music that perfectly emphasizes the fragility and loneliness of a person in boundless space, and survival elements skillfully squeezed into the gameplay. Admirers of the work of the great Stanislav Lem will surely like RymdResa the most, because it perfectly recreates the feelings and experiences of a space pilot, cut off from his native Earth for unthinkably long light years, so well described by the writer in the works Solaris, Return from the Stars, and the cycle Stories about Pilot Perks. Dungeon Souls. A game that combines the principles of roguelike and hack and slash, stands out from the competition with incredibly bright, rather acidic pixel graphics, an epic 8-bit soundtrack and fast-paced gameplay that does not give the player even a second's respite. Dungeon Souls has tons of grind and huge randomly generated dungeons, several character classes, an incredible amount of equipment that will surely delight collectors and hoarders, as well as an extensive crafting system. Sin Slayers. A soulful indie RPG in which you will lead a team of heroes and explore a variety of locations, including dense forests, gluey cemeteries, and creepy dungeons. Sin Slayers is made with love for classic games, turn-based battles, an advanced character leveling system, and a lot of enemies. That's all you need for a good roguelike project. All this is advantageously diluted by the decision-making system, which affects the state of the squad and determines the complexity of the game. Very difficult battles await the sinners, while the righteous will be able to relax. But is it so easy to remain righteous in the cruel world of the game? Children of Morta. RPG about family relationships. At the center of the story is the Bergson family, who are tasked with stopping the end of the world. By joining forces, the heroes will descend into dangerous dungeons and fight monsters, sparing no effort. Game developers from the Dead Mage studio have created an unusual roguelike. The plot of love and sacrifice is fundamental here, and the gameplay, although not relegated to the background, nevertheless feels like a pleasant addition to an exciting story. Playing Children of Morta is worth it for the very cute scenes that unfold in the Bergson estate. You will definitely fall in love with this family. Rad. A post-apocalyptic action game from Double Fine Studio in which you will explore the radioactive wastelands as a teenager who went to Sega's settlement. Where there is radiation, there are mutations, but mutations do not have to be harmful. Stone skin will allow you to take less damage, and a fiery hand will give you the ability to throw fireballs. Rad is a wonderful, humorous adventure that boasts good replay value thanks to the procedural generation of locations and abilities. Post-apocalypse can be fun, and Rad proves it. Noita. A unique pixel action game in which each pixel is an object with physical properties. You can burn, freeze, spray, and explode pixels, thus cracking down on enemies and overcoming obstacles. Noita is dedicated to the adventures of a wizard, with all the attributes that accompany it. A magic wand and a set of spells. An amazing adventure that is so nice to come back to again and again. Streets of Rogue. Almost all roguelike games take place in randomly generated dungeons, but the authors of Streets of Rogue decided to break the rules and send us to a whole city where the characters live their lives, like in GTA. In such an environment, you need to choose a hero and complete various tasks in ways that only come to mind. By tradition, in Streets of Rogue everything that can be randomly generated is randomly generated. Among random items you will find both quite ordinary guns and food processors, and the trick of the game is a complex AI that leads the NPC and reacts to the actions of one naughty citizen. Gunfire Reborn. A surprising mix of first-person shooter, roguelike, and RPG is Gunfire Reborn, a game about brave anthropomorphic animals who deftly wield a variety of weapons. They, as you probably already guessed, seem to live in dungeons, always hunting for new weapons and constantly getting into skirmishes. In this roguelike, you will take on an unusual first-person perspective, but in general, the gameplay remains the same. Running through dungeons, eliminating enemies with normal and not-so-great weapons, and opening chests with the hope that this time a cool skill will fall out. A friend in co-op will help brighten up your adventures. Skul, the Hero Slayer. The story of Skul, the Hero Slayer, is played from the perspective of monsters. Poor, unfortunate, they were attacked by people and lost their king. The few survivors, including our protagonist, the skeleton, will have to return the Lord to the throne, free his comrades, and revive fear in the eyes of the Empire. In addition to an intriguing plot, this game has another feature, a system of skulls that determine the abilities of the protagonist. He can carry up to 2 such heads with him and literally on the go become either a magician, or a kind of werewolf, or an archer, or a powerful warrior, and vice versa, which adds dynamics to the battles. Loop Hero. It seems that Loop Hero has traveled back in time, as it has the graphics of classic games from the 2000s. But no, this is another feature of indie developers who decided to make their roguelike game available to gamers with game microwaves. The idea of Loop Hero was met quite warmly already at the release. We have to create adventures for a lone warrior who got into a time loop and endlessly wanders around the ring map, using a deck of various cards. That is, you yourself put monster spawns, chests, bonuses, and other elements of the landscape, making the life of a wanderer either easier or harder. Neon Abyss. Evolving dungeons have become the hallmark of this roguelike game. With each run, the player opens not only new items, but also rooms, bosses, rules, and even endings, unwittingly complicating his life. But that's not all. Neon Abyss has pets with unique abilities and mini-games, meditation, dance competition, piano playing, that will distract you from the endless murders and routine of the genre. Lost Castle. A roguelike game with beat-em-up mechanics is interesting because it can be played by a group of 4 friends, and cooperative games of this genre are rare and especially appreciated. The gameplay follows the rules of roguelikes. Adventurers wander into a gloomy castle, where they have to destroy monsters, determine their class with randomly dropped loot, and play through the game from the very beginning when something went wrong. Not devoid of humor and visually pleasing project will brighten up a few evenings if you are looking for something to play with friends. Hero Siege in the reviews, users modestly call Diablo at the minimum, and claim that this game is better than the third part of the mentioned series. Indeed, it takes elements of hack and slash and RPG, combines them with roguelike mechanics, and invites gamers to fight packs of monsters in various locations while finding better equipment and leveling skills. The advantage of Hero Siege, in addition to the abundance of content and the spirit of Diablo, was the network mode for 4 players. Dead Age 2. A 3D indie zombie survival game based on roguelike mechanics and dozens of other genres. The deep story follows a group of survivors who must set up a base, search for other people, repel zombie attacks, and reap the rewards of your decisions that will lead to one of 6 endings. From the bagel, the game got random events, the permanent death of comrades, and pumping after each run. Dead Age 2 also boasts tactical turn-based combat, which makes it less dynamic than its comrades from above, but interesting for those who like to think in games. If your favorite game is not included in this list, write in the comments. Thanks for watching. Join this channel to get access to perks. Subscribe, watch our other videos, press thumbs up, turn on notifications, and you will always be aware of what to play today.